Information provided on Dr. Tom Roselle Live by Dr. Tom Roselle, DC, interview guests, show co-hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It is for general information purposes only. Information from this broadcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing any current medical directive or prescription.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dr. Tom Roselle, Ageless Health live stream, and got a good program for you today, one that's leading into this coming Wednesday evening at the Roselle Center for Healing in Fairfax, Virginia. And we're going to be doing a night on anxiety, depression, and how do you deal with it, even just with food, with diet and acupuncture. It's going to be an interesting night. Dr. Stephanie Pina, who many of you already know, who's an amazing naturopathic physician, will be one of our presenters. And Annabeth Goss, who is our top nutritionist at the Roselle Center. She's a world of knowledge. I invite you to join us. Go to rosellecare.com and register, or simply call the office at 703-698-7117 and be there. These two ladies are absolutely amazing and full of knowledge and so forth. You're going to listen to them. They're going to go back and forth. They're going to give you data that maybe some of you didn't know about. And some of the foods that you might be eating may be triggering things. Some of the things that you're not getting in your body may be really a problem for you. And you go into those anxiety spots, or you go down deep into depression hole and you wonder why it is. Guess what? Some of these things really not difficult to fix. And if you know what to do with them, if you really know what the platform is that's perpetuating this process of, the world isn't the right place to live in anymore. Anyway, join them. I promise you're going to have all your questions answered and how to fix things and how you can do it yourself. So join us this Wednesday evening. Call the office at 703-698-7117. Right now, we're going to get into a very interesting topic, your emotions, my friends. And, your emotions have a really profound impact on your health. And we're going to talk through that. Did you know that every organ system in your body, every one of them, has an emotional charge? It has a direct relationship to many things that are going on. And I'm talking everything from your lungs to your heart, to your liver, to your gallbladder, to your adrenal system, and so forth. And it's really something that you have to know about and to be able to take action on, which you can, by the way. So, if you start looking, and I love AI these days, Chat GPT and so forth, is how you ask the question, and that you get the answers that are coming back. So we're gonna talk about that, but just understand this: do negative emotions affect you physically? Well, the short answer is yeah, absolutely they do. We used to label stinking thinking, if you will, right? So what are the effects of emotions on your health? Well, negative emotions, even though that they're short-lived sometimes, but they can potentially perpetuate a cycle and wreak havoc in your body, and things begin to go down the tubes. The symptoms that you have of anxiety or chest pain, and it may not be a problem. You go to the doctor, there's nothing wrong with your heart. There's nothing wrong with your lungs. It can be a trigger for a lot of different things, and could get you into what called substance abuse. And we're going to talk about that. What does that mean? That when the doc doesn't know what else to do to calm your emotional platform, they're going to give you something to calm that anxiety or the spurts of anger that you have and so forth. But I want to turn the light on for you and let you know that some of these things may be self-perpetuating and also finger-pointing across the board, whether your stress, your anger, your anxiety pattern, even profound grief. It can be coming from a certain platform within your body. Negative emotions, if you will, can affect your body's physical expression in many ways. Symptoms of short-term or prolonged grief, for example, right? May produce tiredness, the unwillingness to do anything, body aches and sleep issues and so forth. It's really wild when you start putting these things together. But after over 4 decades of practice and seeing, you know, thousands and thousands of patients, there's a very identifiable platform. And if you begin to follow the worm, if you will, going back not only decades, but thousands of years, the ancients knew that the emotional platform had a tremendous, tremendous effect on the body. You know, there's an old expression called stinking thinking. If you think the wrong things, you're going to produce what you're thinking about. You know, positive thinking, you know, it isn't helpful to ignore negative emotions. You know, it's like you look at your grass and you say, no weeds, no weeds, no weeds. Well, you don't do something about the weeds are going to overtake your garden and destroy everything. But you have to put your brain into a different platform by reframing the thoughts. See, you're in an electromagnetic field and you're going to attract to you those things that you're thinking about. It's not woo woo stuff. It's just that's the way the body works. The body is an electrical field. And so when you have a decrease in the thought process of negativity, if you will, you begin to look at things that are more positive. But we're going to get into the dietary pieces on Wednesday night, the 18th, and they're really going to walk it through. And you can't fake it. You know, there's an old expression, fake it until you make it, but there's a way of making that real for you. What does that mean? When you truly put a smile on your face, when you truly try to get yourself moving quicker, motion perpetuates emotion, you begin to see the body change, but it's an ongoing management process of upregulating certain organ systems, and that allows your body to think differently and act differently. And when you do that, a lot of these things begin to modify. We know we live in a world today with all kinds of, electrical charges from the data storage centers, the microwaves, our cell phones, our pads, and all those things. It's amazing. But let's talk about, that emotional platform that comes from within your body. And again, remember I said that every organ system has an emotion. So when you're really irritated at somebody, when you're angry at somebody, is there an organ system that it correlates to that? Well, absolutely there is. It's your liver. And you've probably heard me talk about it a little bit. There's an old expression that we use with people that, are alcoholic abusive. It's called a dry drunk when they stop drinking. And what happens is that they get angry because they want that drink, and it's the liver showing that piece. But if you put things in your body that are toxic all the time, you're not eating the way you're supposed to, you're overburdening the liver function, you're going to be more angry than you would otherwise. Sometimes when we do things with the neurological system, we do things with the acupuncture system to bring up the energy in that liver pattern, all of a sudden the patient changes. They're not angry anymore. The heart has to do with joy and love. And joy meaning really appreciating the things that are around you, looking at the eyes of a child and seeing beauty there, looking at the grass grow and say, wow, what a wonderful miracle that is. That type of things. It's not, it's something that resonates inside of you. But when you're heartbroken, if you will, because of things that have taken place, or you don't try to exude appreciation and love, for people, that's a whole different ballgame all by itself. And all of a sudden, the presence of joy, that happiness is no longer there. When you talk about your stomach and, the stomach and the pancreas and the spleen, they're all part of the same acupuncture channels and energetic platforms. It has to do with thought processes. When those areas aren't working the way they're supposed to, your thoughts are suppressed. You don't connect the way you should connect. And again, I'm being very superficial right now, but I want you to get the idea. But here's the one. How many of you have problems with asthma, and you don't know where it came from, and you're not really allergic to anything, but you're sighing and so forth? That could be profound grief or sorrow. The lungs, the respiratory system has to do with sorrow. So if you've never got over something, and going back in the day, something happened, somebody left you, you never were able to resolve it, You never were able to complete the cycle. You lost your best friend when you're 5, 6 years old because you moved out of town with your parents, and maybe something happened again like that. And all of a sudden you're just, you're always in grief. You're always in sorrow. But it can affect, and we're going to talk about how these things affect your health in a moment or two. The kidneys, those little, two little filter systems that you have on your back. Well, the kidneys have to do with fear or courage. When your kidney energy is depleted, you become very fearful. And the ancients will tell you, the Eastern medical physicians will tell you that the kidneys are the source of your energy and your life force. So when we're young, we seem to be much braver. We'll do all kinds of things. We'll take risks. We'll do things that we wouldn't do otherwise, right? Well, as we get older and that energy, our life force, our life longevity begins to get less and less and less, we become more fearful. And we see this in patients across the board. So you say, okay, am I stuck with all this thing? No, you're not stuck with it. There's ways of turning all of this stuff around, but you have to take action steps to make it happen. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to touch upon it just a little bit today and show you what can be done. But more importantly, I want you to be aware of how it can affect your body. When you have that fear pattern, you're afraid of something and so forth, kidneys aren't going to work. All of a sudden you go to the doctor and he runs what's called a GFR, glomerular filtration rate, and you start seeing a slowing down of the filtration of the kidney, or you start seeing an increased level what's called creatine and or creatinine, and creatinine will show damage, and it has to be at a certain level for your body to be okay, kidneys to be okay. But all of a sudden, I haven't done anything differently. What's going on? Does it happen as we get older? You look at the medical literature and it says, yeah, perhaps it can, become worse because of age and so forth. Not so much. It's that you're depleting that energetic. You're not supporting the system. Now, somebody's always worried. They have that gut feeling. They have weakness in their stomach. They don't digest foods the way they're supposed to. They always are in a state of trepidation. Now, we do know as we get older that the stomach doesn't produce the enzymes, the digestive acids and so forth that it did when you were younger. For example, when you're in your 60s, you produce about a third of the hydrochloric acid and digestive enzymes that you did when you were in your early 20s, late teens. So you got to eat slower. You shouldn't eat as much. You should shake your time, make sure you're chewing everything. And so you can access it. Or you take nutritional support that's necessary, whether it's hydrochloric acid or gastrin or pepsin, or using some of the pancreatic enzymes that we need. They're called proteolytic enzymes. Those things can be supportive as well. If, we talked about the anger and anger's liver and that liverish feeling, if you see those symptoms coming, there's a chance that you're going to be more susceptible to other things. Now, here's the areas of susceptibility that I want you to know about, right? So if your stomach is a problem, the pancreas is a problem, the spleen is a problem, you're also going to have emotions of anxiety and the ability to trust somebody, believe it or not. It's that I can't trust anybody. I don't trust anyone. That could be a stomach problem, or that program pattern that you have and not trusting could very much cause stomach problems and spleen problems and pancreas problems and so forth. Now, remember we talked about the heart. All of a sudden, you're having problems with your heart. You got a little bit of AFib. Your heart's flipping around. You're going in anxiety level. If your heart and small intestine, which they're yin yang to each other, they're pairs, they're partners, right? Remember, in Chinese medicine, you have the negative and the positive, and the partnership, heart and intestinal tract. It's impatience and love can be the emotion that is going to be problematic. So instead of being open and loving and accepting, you become very impatient and push away. But also your heart and your small intestine are going to get kicked. You're going to get kicked hard. The kidneys have to do with fear, as we said earlier, but also urinary bladder. And you could start having problems with your ears if your kidneys aren't working the way they're supposed to. All of a sudden, you can't hear the way you're supposed to. That energy pattern. You're going to notice people who have hearing problems that their energy is starting to drop as well. And these are subtle things that we see when we're looking at patients, so we know how to put the process together. So it's really critical that you begin to understand that emotional pathways can cause physical problems in your body. You need to know what to do about it, how to deal with it, and so forth. And you can do a lot of this with the dietary pathway. And we're going to talk about this coming Wednesday evening, the 18th, at the Roselle Center for Healing. I really want you to come and because you're going to walk away with good data, ways of really resolving these things. But here's the thing. If you're starting, you go to the doc and something's wrong. You just don't, you know there's a problem, but nobody is really, putting it together for you. And, you know that this is not right. It's not just about taking a drug. It's not taking a tranquilizer. It's not taking something that's going to modify your serotonin. It's about finding out what the problem is. So join us. And I promise you're going to learn a whole lot more than you thought was possible about how your body works. Remember, structural, neurological, chemical, electric, everything that's outside your body, and emotion. The emotion is the decision-making process of the body. All these guys go hand in hand, and you really need to understand how these things, really present who you are as a human being, but also predispose you in many ways to diseases and sicknesses and so forth that happen over a period of years. Stress and emotion has a cycle, if you will, right? So let's talk about that just a little bit. So let's say that you're involved in stress patterns. Now that stress pattern can, if you will, goes to the liver, and the liver, if it's overburdened, stress, remember stress kills, can do what? Produces more cholesterol. It alters bioproduction. It causes the blood to, we'll use the term stagnate in the liver. It can't detoxify the way it's supposed to. So it goes into that. So stress, and then that stress goes into an anger pattern. And anger, by the way, plus things like jealousy and envy and absolute frustration, those are all due to the liver, and it starts with ongoing stress, negative patterns over a period of time. And then ultimately it goes into affecting your heart and your small intestine. And pretty soon, those negative emotions, you start showing up things like not even hate. Remember, instead of love, you got hate, and you then strike out. It's cruelty, and you become very impatient. Your heart and your small intestine are being affected, and the heart begins to clog up because it's going to accumulate a lot of different things you don't want it in there. It becomes inflamed, it becomes irritated. The intestinal system, you end up with irritable bowel symptoms and so forth. And you go to the docs, you get a little bit better, but you never deal with the whole thing. This is part of the puzzle, and you've got to really understand it to be able to fix it. Then that continues, right? Then we can see physical symptoms like palpitations, the heart starts flipping around. We talked about that a minute ago. Blood pressure starts moving up, chest pain. Oh my gosh, I must be having a heart attack. Well, it might be a prodromal, meaning that your heart's not working the way it's supposed to. And it's not about going and taking a ton of different medications. It's about understanding the stress trigger that's causing the problem and what to do about that, as well as supporting that system before it begins to break down. And then it goes further. So we're talking about the stress cycle, right? And then we get into the what, that stress and anger and that hate and worry and anxiety and the mistrust. Pretty soon, the physical symptoms are, as we talked about, you're not digesting anything anymore. You're having a problem with eliminating waste. You're constipated. You're all plugged up. Nothing's moving forward. You have to understand that there is a hand in glove relationship between your emotional state and your physical symptoms. And then ultimately we go down the pike again, and then we get into what? We get into That's stress, anger, anxiety, depression, and sadness. Remember, we talked about the lungs? So pretty soon we have breathing problems. So they could be anything. Uh, Decreased oxygen production. We have a hard time walking upstairs. And then we become more constipated because the lung and the large intestine work hand in glove together. And then it continues. And pretty soon it's going to affect our central energetics, our kidney, our bladder, and then we're going to have a loss of our prime energy that keeps us alive. Sexual energy goes down. We don't care about anything. You're not attractive to me. Years ago, you can keep your hands off your spouse, your mate, your partner. Now it's like, but this is a whole stress cycle that continues to affect emotions and organ systems, and then we adapt, right? So our gut doesn't work for us, so we don't eat the way we're supposed to. We don't get exercise because we don't want to be outside. We don't appreciate anything. It's a lousy place to be, but we're going to show you how to deal with that, and something that we deal with all the time when we deal with patients. We have to understand it. We have to really get it. So when you have impaired ability to eliminate and detoxify, it's going to affect all kinds of systems. You're not going to be able to get rid of the toxins no matter what you do. You're just chasing your tail all the time, and pretty soon these organ systems get beat up on an ongoing basis. So what I want you to know is that this stuff is fixable, but you have to identify it. You have to see it. You have to get out of your own way sometimes. You have to be willing, to take a proactive stance. And we're going to show you what that means. There are flower essences that we use in the office that are useful with this. There are points in acupuncture points that can be used to reverse all kinds of things. When you're talking about the heart and circulatory patterns and the intestinal system for absorption, and the bile and the production and its ability to allow sleep to occur. When I have a patient that tells me that they're waking up, at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the morning all the time, I'm saying, what's wrong with your liver? Or if it goes after that, it might be 3 o'clock or 3:30. Everything right on the dot every day, every night. And I start looking at grief. What's going on? What happened in their life? So you have to, as a patient, understand that things just don't happen. You were designed perfectly. And unfortunately, because of our environmental patterns, the things that we eat, the things that we don't eat, the things that we're exposed to, the things that we listen to, the things that we accept as normal, we get into this lousy spin cycle that makes things worse for us. Emotions have a very specific impact on the body, and it can be finger pointed directly based on what the symptoms are, what organ systems are being affected. Patient comes in the other day, and I asked him, I said, so, you're complaining of a tinnitus? And they said, yeah, I am. And I said, is it high pitched or low pitched? And they said, well, it's a high pitched sound. And so I asked a couple other questions. I said, so that tells me that you're probably having some problems with your liver. I said, what? I said, I don't have any problems with my liver. I said, well, maybe. And now they think that I'm this crazy person. And I said, look, here's the deal. Every symptom has an association with multiple patterns, but that high-pitched sound, and I said, have you had some blood work done lately, and maybe your cholesterol is too high, or have you felt some discomfort, from underneath your ribs and maybe radiating to the back of your shoulder and so forth on the right side? And the guy's just looking at me, and he said, yeah, a little bit. I said, okay. And I said, so what are you angry about? What are you, irritated about? What happened that you're chewing on this thing? I said, because that problem that you're having is not something that is isolated just to your ear. It's coming from other places as well. And on Wednesday evening, the 18th, coming up very quickly, Dr. Pina and Annabeth are going to get into some of these concepts, very, very specific. Ask the questions. Say, hey, could it be this? Could it be that? What can I do about that? And if I can ever help you, you know how to find me. Just go to drtomroselle.com and I'll answer your questions straight up. these are areas that most physicians forget about. They don't get it, and it's not that they're not capable of understanding it. They just think everything is compartmentalized. You know what happens when you go to a doc today, right? You go in and they got the computer and they put the information in, and they push the button and said, well, let's take this and see what happens. It's a drug-induced, diagnosis. That's not the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to understand how the body begins to come together, if you will. So that's what I want to make sure that you get. That's what I want to make sure that you understand. Get a hold of me, reach out, drtomroselle.com, and we'll put this, into a place of really understandability. I use a lot of the flower essences from Lotus Way in the practice. And, this one, for example, is Awaken. And it has to do with self-exposure and the ability to be present and listen to what's really being said. There's other ones that we use. I'm not telling you to go get these whatsoever, but I'm saying, expansive presence. These are flower elixirs. This was powerful receptivity, right? The luminescent expression of who you are. Now, not everybody needs the same thing, but there's ways of understanding this and making it happen. But when you understand that, sometimes you don't take action that you should, you should, right? And so you have inspired action. There are flower elixir that is kind of interesting. It's wild creativity. It's one that I take all the time. And they come in sprays, if you will. They come in oils that you can put on your skin. And for me, I kind of like this one. I just pop it in my mouth, and a couple of minutes from now, I'm going to go drive my staff crazy because all of a sudden I'm going to work and functional and so forth. But listen, these are the things we want to teach you. We actually have a class on this as well. We'll do it sometime, probably in the fall. But in the meantime, ask the question. Let us know how we can help you. And remember, I'm here every week for one reason only. Simply this. I love you all. You have a great day. I'll see you soon. Bye.